I convinced Mom and Dad if they were going to install stone, it had to go on the garage as well as the house. Mom adamantly didn't want the stone anywhere other than the backyard and thought it was a waste to go on just a garage. Know how I said Mom was in charge? Sometimes I get stubborn. Why? Because sitting under her hypothetical future pergola, what are you going to see? Answer: the garage. Welcome to Matt's DIY Home Show. This is my 5th go-around of veneer stone, so these tips are time-worn and earned with my blood and tears. Let's jump into the work. Here, because we have a rain screen, I opted for concrete board. It'll span the 16-inch stud spacing and allow me to install the stone over top. It's expensive relative to lath and mortar, but I felt it was the best option. If I was going to do this again for the stone section, I wouldn't have used wood strips for the rain screen. I'd have opted for a plastic dimpled foundation wrap. Okay, I'm all laid out. We'll cut around here. That'll give us the 5.5 inches around the whole thing that we'll need. We can tune this up after the fact if we have to. I think Dad is gonna have to spend 8 million years putting 10,000 screws into this thing. In keeping with the theme of mitigating water issues, I made sure to add drip edge to the bottom of all the stone along the garage. This will help move any water further away from the wall. The bottom got 2-inch drip edge, and one will get installed over the top afterwards before the siding goes on. The concrete board install goes the same way as on any shower. Cut the board with a tile blade on a grinder and get it installed. Nothing special needed, just tons of screws. For the rain screen, I just had to add some battens to ensure the edges of the board were supported. Another case where the dimple membrane would have been a better choice. Several points I had trouble areas that weren't as straightforward. The riser for the gas line will get a metal trim box. I have no plan for the front of the garage. I was just doing. Spoiler, but it's probably the most DIY-like section of the job. I'll talk about what I could have done differently later. I did make sure that the whole front of the garage lined up all the way across so it'll look nice once it's done. So I have an attachment for my grinder so that it has a dust shroud. So I hooked it up, gave it a shot. This wall is really uneven, so I may actually have to put a parging coat over top of it, just a skim coat, to level it out. Otherwise, I'm going to be using probably a lot more thin set on this wall just to get it all set up. But I'm going to grind a little bit, take some of the high spots down. Oh. So I'm just filling in, trying to flatten as much as possible. I'll go back after with a brush and give it some tooth as a scratch coat. So what I'm trying to do here is get it flat, because this wall is not flat at all. Because I might have to fill too much on the wall. The parging on the house was in really good shape, but because of the faux stone texture, it was quite uneven. To make it easier to install the stone, I used the grinder to knock down the high spots, and then used thin set to skim coat it to level the surface out. This thin set was a little old and stiff, so it didn't spread as easy as I'm used to. I'm using a small margin trowel to get the thin set out of the bucket onto my trusty 18-inch flat trowel to spread it out. If you keep the trowel loaded up with thin set, it does a quick and easy job of filling low spots and evening out the wall. All right, so here's the plan. I'm gonna have tile come across to here, then we're gonna bump out 2.5 inches, come over here, and then come back. I have a board to go here, a board to go here. That'll catch this. I'll have a corner here, stone on the side. It's gonna be a giant freaking amount of work to make this less ugly. But, because I'm gonna have to 45 bevel this and this so that it makes a nice front trim. Or I don't cut it straight and completely forget about it and it'll look fine and no one will ever look at it again. Or people will look at it and go, what a hack. But that's practically my name. All right, we got this all boxed in. I just used some hardy backer, stapled the sides on because they split if you screw them. Since the patio slopes, I leveled and added in some supports for the stone so that I can easily tile it up. I'll fill in these spaces after the main stone is installed and these boards are taken away. This stone install should be a fairly simple process. I'm going to use thin set for this because we put up the concrete board. For this veneer stone, usually they do kind of a 50-50 mix of thin set and mortar, but since this is going up, I have a solid base at the bottom with the drip edge. I shouldn't have any issues with it sagging. We have some Carrara marble that Mom picked. Natural stone comes in natural flavors. Natural flavors. From nature. So the corners are 1x6. Field pieces are a full 18 inches long, 6 inches tall. And the backs are pretty much rectified. So that's why I'm gonna use thin set instead of just thin set and mortar, because I'm not gonna need a lot on the wall. I'm gonna start out with a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch trowel. I have a 3/8 by 3/8 inch trowel that I could potentially use too, if it doesn't work out. All right, let's see how this goes. I think this 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch trowel is gonna be too. So this is gonna be a whole bunch of futzing around. I'm able to figure out kind of what I'm doing here, which is exactly what you want your contractor to say when they're installing stuff. So what I don't like about the 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, I don't get enough spread on the back of the tile. For the stone install itself, I started off back buttering the stone with the trowel. I did this because of how hot it was and how much sun there was out there. If I had applied the thin set to the wall, it would have hardened enough on the wall that I wouldn't have got many panels on before it kicked off. It is much slower than applying thin set to the wall and then skim back buttering the stone, but it's what I thought best. I do change how I apply the stone a few times throughout this process. To avoid a bunch of cuts initially on the corner, I chose to use a spacer to set the gap and then drove a screw in to hold the side up. I honestly don't know why I did it this way. All of the panels would get cut to the same length, so I should have just batch cut the 4 needed and installed them. I installed the first row, ensuring it was level so that I could use that to stack the rest of my stone off of it. If you are using light colored stone, I always recommend using white thin set. If any squeezes through, or if the joints aren't perfect, it helps hide that and makes mistakes disappear. This is stacking stone, so it just rests on top of the stone below. I installed it in a running manner, going down the wall at the same time I went up. This does have some disadvantages, however. If you run into any areas where the stones are not exactly the same, you do end up with weird gaps. There's nothing different about installing the stone over tile, just keep moving. The way I'm planning on doing this return, I'm going to bring stone back to here. So I'm going to cut pieces that can get glued to the back face of this. Return back here to make our own corners. I've committed to doing it on this side because I did it on this side. Piecing in beside the door was a bit of a nightmare. Because we didn't have any more corners for the return to the jamb, I came up with a plan to use a chisel to split the edge rather than to saw cut it, and then glue a short piece to the backside, essentially creating my own corner. This stone did not like to be split. It shattered almost everywhere except where I wanted it to, so it was extremely frustrating doing it. My plan was to continue doing this on the garage doors too, but with how difficult it was, I just abandoned it once the side door was done. I added a thin set edge to the top of the stone so that if any water got behind it, it would drain out rather than getting trapped against the concrete board behind the stone. The small walls on the garage went up very quickly and really made them look good. I trusted myself more, so I batch cut all the stone for the walls and then troweled the thin set on the wall rather than on the stone because the area was so much smaller that I was working with. Cutting stone is the same as tile. I used a grinder with a tile blade and a small tile table saw. I ended up using the table saw almost exclusively at the end because most of my cutting was piecing the same size cuts over and over again. I decided on this job to leave all the piecing to the end. I find it easier, mostly because it saves all the picky work for all at once. You can cut the small pieces, mix up some thin set, and then install them all at the same time. I find doing it while you're installing the main panels can slow the process down enough that it lets your thin set kick off and you end up wasting more of it. This is just my personal preference. Now it's time to get the house done. I'll just show you finished sections because it's the same process that I showed on the garage already. I just rinsed and repeated over and over. Filled in the corners as we go. We got this put in. All of this is installed. Prepped over here. threw in the vent this morning. Got this all blocked out. We're gonna do a bit of a brick pattern on here to try and make it a little bit nicer. We're gonna end at the edge of the window and we'll try and find some way nice to trim that out after the fact. Did the flashing the other day. You just screw it in, make it nice, but I'll do that after the fact. All right, so we blasted through that wall. Finish this off. So what I'm doing, since we're out of corners and we can't get more, is to do, well, we can, but they're ridiculously expensive. I'm going out with one, in with the other, but then we'll come in here with a grout bag, grout the corner, any of this stuff on here. When this dries up, it just comes right off, and then I have a stainless steel wild brush that I can hit anything that gets on the face of it. And what's nice with the white is it doesn't stain anything. So get this done, get it done to there, and then we're done for the day, I think. All right, I plowed through the rest of it. I didn't record anything because it's more of the same. So what we did is we did a weave pattern here on the edge, or a brick pattern here on the edge. We'll knock all this thin set off once it dries. I'll get in there with some grout, fill some of those grout joints. Same thing, keyed it on the edge all the way up there. Filled the face, did the same thing on this side. There's gonna be some sort of tray here for the gas. I still haven't figured out what that's gonna be, but there's gonna be a tray for the gas. Spacing out the window, and then we'll figure out something to trim the window on. And we have some piecing to do here at the bottom. We'll do all that tomorrow. That's probably gonna take as long as doing the wall did. So we've given this overnight to cure. So what the job for today is pulling off all these bottom support boards. We're gonna cut some stone to piece into the bottom there, and then we'll space it up with something. I'm not sure what, probably some foam or something like that. I don't know. I'm hoping only a couple hours of work to do. I feel. I have more than my 43 inches that I need. What do you mean?
What are normally caterpillars?
Like in nature, or? All right, we finished all the piecing. We'll caulk that bottom later. I think it looks pretty good. We have to figure out something for this window. Let's take a look at some finished shots of this stone. I think the stone added so much to the look of this backyard and really goes nicely with the greens and purples in Mom's garden. It matches so well with the hardy board too. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Maggie.